Right, so Pixelflow 2.0 is around the corner, or it's just released, depending on when you're watching this video. And as part of that release, there's some pretty big updates for the P80. There's a few updates for the Q8. There's also some updates that relate in terms of Pixelflow to the P20, the P20 DS and the P10, but there's no new features there. So let's jump in, let's have a look at how this affects the P80. So what's new? We've got linking, we've got web control, we've got keyframing, we've got live backgrounds, and then we've got some updates to do with scaling, so the scaling's a little bit better. We've got some changing card options that are now available. We've got a much tidier EDID list, and then we've got some changes to the way that backgrounds are dealt with, because obviously now we've got live backgrounds as well. So lots of changes as well as lots of updates. So let's jump in. My setup is essentially I'm doing a quad record here of 4 different things, just using vMix. So I've got a desktop capture, I've got the multi-view being captured, and then I've got 2 halves of a screen. So this is one screen, we'll come back to this later, but each side of it is 4K. So this is 2 4Ks as one screen, and then I'm just outputting that into a Blackmagic quad card for these 3 sources to make sure they're all being captured. So let's jump into linking first. So I don't have 2 P80s, so unfortunately I'm going to have to do this in the sim. But in the simulation projects, I just create a new project. I'm just going to leave it like that. And then I'm just going to add 2 P80s. So earlier on I said we've got some updates in terms of what we can have in this card slot. There's now some options for this card slot. So I need 2 with the link cards in their standard configuration. I'm just going to add 2 P80s, call them device 1, device 2. The device names now become very important because you will need those when you come to choosing sources between the 2 boxes, between the 2 frames. You'll need these device 1, device 2. You can rename them to top, bottom, front of house, back of house, main, stage box, whatever you need to name them, you can name them to. So we're just going to wait for these 2 simulated projects, or these 2 sims to wake up. Great, so I'm just going to go into one of them. Super. So if you had them linked, these would be green. So on my live frame, these are green because I have SFPs in them with a bit of fiber between them, not doing anything. But basically, if you go to settings, links settings, you'll need to create a link between the devices, give it a name. So I'm just going to get H. And then I'm going to add my 2 devices, device 1, device 2, okay. Again, if they were really linked, yeah, these would be green, showing the links. I don't know if you're allowed to cross-connect them. I don't know if you need to have them in the right order or anything like that at the moment, but I don't think it will matter. And then basically you've got your 2 devices here, device 1, device 2, and then you click on them and click the plus, and this makes this input now available to both frames. So and you can have 8 of them per frame, so 8 4Ks each direction. So I'm just going to add 1 of each way like that. And now I've got 1 of my inputs going each way. So I can also click the batch add and then multi-select these, so I can set the the first 7. Let's make it 8 from that frame, and then again on this frame I can add those first 8 sources. So we've got 8 going each way, and then that's it. That's how you link. That's how you enable a source going both ways. And then where this becomes important is when you go to your programming. Let me just create a screen first. When you go to your programming, you will see that you have global sources, which are coming with this link. So you can see that they've come across from the other side. And then you've also got your local sources here. Now, in terms of how this works, in terms of output screens, you can't have 2 outputs on 2 different frames being one screen. So essentially, you have screen 1, device 1. If I add a screen and I want to use my outputs on device 2, I can add them from my device 2, and you'll see device 1, device 2 in this screen list over here, showing where they're from. And then when it comes to programming, if I have my 2 screens side by side, when I click on them, you'll see that this one on device 1 goes device 1, global sources, local sources. As soon as I click into my second one, I get my global sources and my local sources. Obviously, this is contextual to which frame you're on at this point, which is why naming them becomes so important. So loads of different use cases, but you'll see that the resources are not shared between the frames. They are independent at the moment. And basically, also your screens, what's available is also very frame, there's a divide between the frames. So this is only input sharing. It's probably the easiest way of describing this. So yeah, so that's how that works. That's linking. It will be as simple as that. You can also, for your multi-viewer, add your global sources. So in the side, it doesn't say local remote, but for instance, these ones down here, which are the global ones on device 2, these are the global ones. Well, these are the global ones on device 1. You can then just stick them in, mix and match. So it will be able to have 2 multi-viewers on each frame. You will be able to have the same sources on both frames as long as they're made global in terms of multi-viewer. So that's interesting. That's good to know, because you might want to stick a multi-view at front of house and a stage box at front of house. Use one frame as your multi-view for front of house and stage box for front of house, and then back of house have your your main background layers and other bits of media servery stuff, and your operator sits back of house with their multi-views. Your show callers at front of house, they have a different multi-view, and as long as you can make your sources global, then you can give them an extra multi-view essentially for free if you're in that situation. So interesting use case. That's pretty much it for linking. If I jump back to my live box, so I have 2 QSFP 28s plugged in currently with a fiber linking between 5 and 6. So I've literally just linked them. It doesn't do anything because I don't have another frame at the other end, but you would need to link these two, and I believe you'll also need to link the Ethernet as well for control. So it's worth noting. But when it comes to pressing take across your 2 screens, sorry, let me go back to the sim. When it comes to pressing take across both screens, when you press take, it will take both boxes at the same time. So that's how that will work. Moving on, web control. So web control is pretty cool. Let me just launch Chrome. So just launching Chrome, you stick in the IP address, which you can find here. And basically you get given the same interface as if you were running Pixelflow. So you've got settings, you've got preferences. You can go in, once you're in a frame, you would have your link options here again. This one, you can't link a second device because there's no second device on the network or on the link cables. So you can see my live device. We can go to our screens, do some programming. So this is exactly as you would set it up. In the recording, this might be a little bit jumpy because this machine is doing quite a lot. I've got it doing play out of Resolume. I've got it doing recording. Everything is 4K in quadrants, so there's a load of pixels going in and out of this machine. So everything here is pretty much as you would expect it. If you're only using one frame, you can get rid of this side bit by collapsing down here, which you may or may not want to do. If you collapse this side panel, your screens appear up here across the top. There's also 2 skins now, so you've got a Cosmic Grey and Midnight Black. These exist in Pixelflow as well, so if I jump back to Pixelflow, they're up here. So these are pretty much identical copies of each other, and these are pretty good. The video is pretty good. It's pretty consistent across our network, so that's good. You can also turn the live input view off, so that's there as well. Cool. I'm gonna go back to Pixelflow. What I would like to show first is keyframing. So I'm just going to go into my programming, and here I've got some Big Buck Bunny playing back from different sources. So I'm going to quickly just throw this on the background. This is a nice big cut. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a 1080p feed, stick that over here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this feed from this side to this side. So I'm going to create a couple of presets. Well, actually, on my layer first, I'm going to enable keyframing. So it's down the bottom again. And I'm going to set my time to be 10 seconds to make it nice and easy for this video. So that's my initial keyframe. So I'm going to store that as a preset. So preset 1. Then I'm just going to bump it to the other side. And then I'm going to add preset 2. Great. So I'm going to take, let's take 1 to main. So we've got 2 in the background. And then when I press take, it will bump this to the other side. So quickly for the recording, I'm going to jump back to my grid view. If there is a tear down the middle of this, it's because of the way I'm recording it. That's not how it would be output. It's just a Blackmagic card, input card that I've got. I don't know if it has a tear down the middle. I'm just assuming not. But if I press take, you will see that that will move across the screen to the other side. Okay, so we've got live keyframing on both the background or any layers behind the keyframe, but also the keyframe itself. And I do indeed have a tear in my recording setup, but that's just the way I'm doing it. So that's keyframing. There's not really a lot more to say about that. You can have pips coming on and off at different times because you can set your start time and duration. So by using these two, you can have pips appearing, pips disappearing, because you can have them going off screen as well. So yeah, they've got linear curve, S curve. There's a few options there if you need to do keyframing. Cool. So let's jump back to the software, and we're going to jump into the biggest topic, which is the live backgrounds. So in the P80, you get 8 layers, 8 4K layers, I should say. So backgrounds, live backgrounds. This has changed. This has changed for all of the boxes in this series. Backgrounds now, you have a little background at the top. On the P series, the P10, P20, you'll also have another one next to it for logos. That's changed from where it was previously. So backgrounds, you now have image, which you can add, you know, as before, you can just add images for your backgrounds. If you add an image for your background, it is scalable. You can drag it to wherever you want it on. You can do the same as what you used to be able to do. But now we've got these live backgrounds here. So to add a live background, we have to go to edit. And you'll notice down the right hand side here, we have our live backgrounds. So anyone who's done this with Analog Way before will know about background sets and how that works. So basically you create a background, give it a name, and then once you've created the backgrounds, you can then apply the backgrounds. Now there's a reason why you have to do this, and that becomes more apparent with the options you have available. So first of all, I'm going to leave it in connector mode at the top here. And you'll see I've got these two sides of this screen. So this is two 4Ks next to each other, 4K UHDs. Let me just drag this one, which is 1080p. I'm just going to drag it onto this side, and I'm going to drag the same connector onto the other side. So in this mode, you can see I'm putting a 1080p in the top left corner of each connector. If I change it to screen mode and do the same, you'll see it just puts it in the top left of the screen. Okay, so you can either do your backgrounds by connector, or you can do them across the whole screen. If you're in screen mode, you can't then put another connector on the right hand side at the moment. So this is a single connector only type scenario. So I'm going to go back to connector. Now you'll notice I have Big Block Bunny coming in here at 4K, so I can drag that on to both sides, and I can do dual 4K as a background set. I can then go to my second background set, and I'm going to drag this one on here. Now if I drag it on as it currently is, you'll see that it takes the left hand side. So anything that is not part of the image just gets cropped off basically, and if I go to screen mode, I can do the same, and it will fit perfectly. So if you are doing backgrounds across the whole screen, you can bring them in one way. If you need to bring them in over multiple connectors, you can do that as well. In connector mode, your input and output sizes must match, although you can crop. So you can essentially do AOI on background connectors if you need to do that. Okay, so that's let me rename this to well, let me set this back up, sorry, to this one, and call it single. So now I've created those two backgrounds. If we go back here, this is where you'll need to click back. If I just remove everything from the program, I can quickly just drag my dual 4K or drag my single on. You can't put this anywhere other than top left. You can't drag it, you can't scale it. These are non-scaling background layers. There is also one other background thing we need to touch on, which is obviously when you set up your device. If I just do it on this 7.8 here, if you are in split mode, backgrounds work a little bit different. So I'm just going to add another screen. We're going to take those two connectors. So we've got left hand, right hand when it comes to split. That's how splits work. So then when we go to programming on that screen, if we go to our live backgrounds and edit, you'll see that we have a different set of backgrounds. So backgrounds, you can't use the same background across two screens. You need to create it twice for each screen. You'll see that this is our screen. If I now drag this 1080p on, you'll see that it only fills half of it, right? Which would be expected because this is 3840 by 1080. However, this second half of this screen, so this right-hand connector, is not treated as a separate connector. Okay, so in screen mode, same sort of thing. So if I go back to connector mode, if I drag this standard UHD 4K, you'll see that it's only taken the top half of my image. So whether I'm in screen mode or connector mode here, it wouldn't matter. If I jump back to device, and if I make this one split as well, and then in my screen, for my screen 2, I'm going to add those second set of connectors, and I'm going to align them as if I was doing it the other way around, really. I'm going to align them as if I'm taking the connectors out the back. If I go back to programming, go back to our backgrounds, live backgrounds here. So now you can see my 4 connectors all side by side. In connector mode, if I drag one on, I get one for each pair. That's how that works. And if I take it to screen mode, drag it on, it's one for the whole screen. So this again is something to be aware of. So in this example, I could take that and stick my 4Ks either side, or I can stick this one across the whole thing. I can stick this one across the whole thing in screen mode. But again, it will only take the top half. It will take the upper top left bit of your image on your input and crop the rest off. So that's how backgrounds are done. Other new features or other updates, let me just go back to the quad mode, is when you come to the multi-viewer, the scaling in the multi-viewer is now a lot better. So I've noticed this, just generally massive improvements to the scaling quality in the multi-viewer. There is also a tidy up that's happened to the EDID list. So if we go back and set an input, let's take this one. Go here. So this list here has been massively tidied up, so it's a lot better. You'll also see that the CEAs now have more options in terms of their frequencies or frame rates, so that's all good. And the last update I think is important is in the audio matrix. In terms of these little icons, basically they've all got bigger, much more easier to understand. So this one, this mutes, and this sends out some tone. So you've got mutes on the inputs and the outputs, and you've got tone on the outputs as well. Okay. If you are using your outputs to route audio out over your HDMI and SDI connectors, when you set your device, or sorry, when you set up your screen, when you set your output, you do need to make sure that you have audio enabled here. Otherwise, no audio will actually pass out of the connector. Cool, and that's pretty much it.